This is Full-Time Devils. This is the Chelsea versus Manchester United preview, and it is the return of the special one. Is it going to be a big Chelsea and United loving with fans with arms around each other, holding hands, singing songs? No, that's probably not what's going to happen, but it is going to be an interesting reception for Jose at Stamford Bridge. Howson, do you think that it matters what reception that he's going to get, and what kind of reception do you think it's going to be?
From the Chelsea fans that I've known and the ones that I've met, I think he'll probably get a round of applause.
Right.
I don't think they'll be cheering him. I don't think they'll do what we did for Robin van Persie in the Fenerbahce game, where if we score, they'll all cheer Mourinho. I can't see anything like that happening. But I do think he'll get a decent reception because isn't he their most successful manager ever? It's like Sir Alex Ferguson disappearing and then coming back to Old Trafford in a bit of a smaller scale. So I expect him to get a pretty good reception, to be honest.
Most successful manager ever, you say, but he's not quite the godlike tier of Roberto Di Matteo who managed to get the Champions League, is he? Statman Dave, do you think the reception even matters, what Jose is going to get? Do you think it's going to affect the tactics or out like that?
No, I think the tactical approach will be similar to Liverpool. I think United will sit deep and look to counter-attack. I think they've just got to get those counter-attacking moves going a little bit smoother and they will score goals. I think Paul Pogba's got to be a little bit more responsible at number 10. I think he needs to drift a little bit more laterally. But apart from that, I think United will be fine. They'll sit deep and look to hit Chelsea on the break. Chelsea will probably go with the back three. So it'll be interesting to see Rashford and Martial 1v1 versus their outside centre-backs. I can't wait for that.
And Mohamed from Squawka is here as well. Last thing on Jose Mourinho's return then in the reception. What do you think it's going to be like? Do you think it's going to be sort of a good feeling around the whole ground?
I think they'll applaud him before the game. I think they'll give him a nice round of applause when he comes out. And they'll probably even give him a little bit of a sing-song. But once the game starts, I mean, Stamford Bridge, when United go there, it's never been the nicest atmospheres. I think they'll be full-on vitriol. And he'll get their backs up as well. You know he will. He'll play to the gallery. He'll make big gestures when United don't get decisions, etc., etc. So he's not going to be nice and friendly. So they won't be friendly back. I think it'll be a pretty loud and raucous atmosphere at the Bridge.
There's a difference, isn't there, between a little bit of friendliness before the game and things like that, and then downright cringiness like we saw between, well, the likes of Liverpool and Dortmund, let's just say. Let's get your 11s then, boys. We'll start with you, Mohamed. What are you starting for the game against Chelsea?
I mean, I would start De Gea. I'd start Darmian. Again, he played pretty well last night. Got 7 tackles, really put himself about. Bailey, Blind, Shaw, Herrera, Pogba, Mata. And then I'd start Lingard and Martial with Zlatan up front. But that's not going to happen. I mean, obviously, Valencia will start right back. Fellaini will start ahead of Mata in midfield, sitting and defending like he did against Liverpool. And then it'll probably Rashford will start wide, even though he's not a winger. I think you're wasting him wide, really.
Howson, starting 11.
Big Dave in net. Back four of Valencia, Blind as my fullbacks. I think he comes straight back in. I think Shaw still needs minutes. Bailly and Smalling at centre half, even though they're racking up the minutes between them at the moment, and I hope that don't come to bite us on the arse at some point in the near future. And midfield, I've struggled with. I'd like to see us go with a quite attacking midfield, but you also have to think about Chelsea and how we're going to contain them. They're going to line up with a 3-5-2, I reckon, against us, which means that the midfield's going to be proper crowded. And this means I'm really torn because on one hand, I want to see Fellaini in there for the work rate, defensive duties, and just outright muscle. But I also think in a congested midfield, as we saw with him when he was played as a number 10 under Louis van Gaal, he ain't the best. That being said, I am picking him in a deep line 2 alongside Ander Herrera. Let Paul Pogba go in front of them just a little bit. And between the three of them, they're all going to sort of sit in and defend and then hopefully look to counter. And I'm looking to counter with pace. And I'm looking to Jesse Lingard, if he's fit. If not, then Juan Mata. And then Rashford on the other wing and Zlatan up front. I'm going to keep Martial on the bench for now because I think he's going to start against Manchester City next week.
So you don't put Juan Mata in your team if Lingard's fit. Why is that, mate?
Just for the work rate element, and I think he's a little bit quicker than Juan Mata, and I think in this game, we're probably not going to have the most of the ball, and we are going to have to look to try and attack quickly on the transition. And I think Rashford and Lingard as the 2 outlets, and obviously bringing Zlatan in to sort of hold it up and release one of those in behind. I like the way Lingard gets in. We saw against Fenerbahce that Mata can get in behind, but I think defensively you get an extra element if you play Jesse Lingard over Juan Mata, although I think Juan Mata would not be a bad choice. And if he has got to knock Jesse Lingard, then Juan Mata is definitely in that place.
I get all the positional concerns when it comes to Juan Mata. Where can you actually fit him in the team? But I don't know. I just feel like every time he's played this season, we've looked a bit better. Statman Dave, is he starting in your team?
No, unfortunately not, guys. I'm going to go with David De Gea in goal. That's, paints himself his shirt every single week. Valencia at right back, he's been absolutely brilliant in the Premier League going forward. As well as defensively, he's won more tackles than any other United player this season. And they've got Bailly, Smalling in the middle, and Daley Blind at left back. I was so impressed with Daley Blind's work on Coutinho. Firmino first man-to-man with him, then Coutinho when he moved out there. Absolutely bossed it. United had a very narrow back four in that game, and both fullbacks were absolutely brilliant. Into midfield, I can't really change it, to be honest. I think I'm going to have to go with Herrera, Marouane Fellaini. Herrera, because he's just in form at the moment. He's so good. His ability to escape the gegenpress was just unheard of in a way. He completed 5 out of 5 of his dribbles in that game, and it was every single time there were three to four players on him, and he would just roll, he'd spin, he'd play the pass out and get United going forward. So he's definitely got to be in there. And again, I think Fellaini's got to be in there. I'd love to see Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick was wonderful against Fenerbahce. A performance of the aged in a way. Defensively fantastic, excellent on the ball. But what Marouane Fellaini does give you is that grit and that determination. He's won more tackles than any other United player per game in the Premier League this season. He's winning 2.5 tackles per game. So you've got to get him in there. Then my 3 behind Zlatan Ibrahimovic is going to be Jess Lingard on the right-hand side. Again, excellent performance against Fenerbahce. He was so good at running, being that guy that's just rotating the positions, that's getting in the space, and the touch before he laid it off to Paul Pogba was absolutely brilliant. So definitely Jess on the right-hand side. I'm going to throw Pogba in at number 10. Again, I was super critical of Pogba at number 10, but I feel like he can do a job there in this sort of defensive, counter-attacking system that Mourinho is going to play. Rashford on the right, and of course, the big man up front.
Wow, Marouane Fellaini, most tackles per game in the Premier League for United. That is impressive. Right, it's time for FanDuel. Over to Adam McCullough at Old Trafford.
It's time for FanDuel, your weekly chance to play fantasy football and win money doing it. Here's our full-time Devils team for this week. David the Save De Gea, bound to get points, right? Daley Blind, Jesse Lingard and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's due a goal. We've also got in the midfield, Son from Spurs, who's been bagging goals, and Junior Stanislas. Let's see what your teams are made of. So last time out, full-time Devils didn't do too well. We finished very, very low in the table. But this week, things are going to change. We're entering the fan favourite league where you can win a share of £6,000. Not bad. It's £5 to enter, and if you use the promo code DEVILS and it's your first time playing and you finish outside of those paying positions, then you'll get your stake back. You have to be over 18 in the UK to play, and there's also a chance to win Xbox Ones and some football shirts. So get involved and take on full-time Devils in FanDuel.
Right, boys, I want to talk to you about Paul Pogba. Is the settling-in period over for him? Do we look like we've found his sort of best place in United's team? Dave?
Well, I think Paul Pogba's going to play 2 roles for Manchester United this season. I think he's going to play that number 10 role against bigger sides and look to be the outlet and look to be the first level of the press, but also at central midfield. I feel at central midfield, that's his best position at the moment. You look at the games at Fenerbahce, Southampton, probably his 2 best performances this season. He's played in a deeper role. He's had energy. He's attacked them. He's created chances. He's won tackles. He's pretty much done everything as a complete midfielder. What I want to see more from him at number 10, again, is the movement. He needs to understand his relationship with Zlatan Ibrahimovic a bit better. He needs to understand when Zlatan's going to look for a flick on, when he's going to look for a knockdown in terms of whether Paul Pogba moves into the 10 space or moves in behind. I'd also like to see him drift wide a lot more. You look at Kevin De Bruyne, who 2 years ago was the best attacking midfielder in world football. What did he do? He drifted wide and he crossed the ball. What's Paul Pogba got? He's got pace, he's got the ability on the ball, but he also has a fantastic delivery from wide areas. The chance against Liverpool was Paul Pogba in a wide area, a really whipped-in delivery, and that's something that I want to see him doing more and more. He doesn't do that enough for me, and his technique is absolutely brilliant from those positions, so I want to see that over and over again, and United will start scoring goals from that. Zlatan in the middle, or Lingard, or Rashford, overloading the penalty area there with Pogba whipping it in. That's what I want to see.
When you mentioned there about him starting at 10 for the big teams, Mohamed, mate, do you think that we've had Pogba now for a while and we've seen his best performance to date against Fenerbahce? Do you think that maybe we should just be carrying on playing him there and playing him in the same way that we did in that game rather than switching him about?
No, because the thing is, really, you want to play him. Ideally, you play him as a nominal 10 in a 4-3-3. That's where you want to play him, really. But the thing with doing that is United don't really have that third midfielder. You can play under Herrera as a passing guy, as the pivot, or as the number 8, but you can't. There's no third midfielder to complement. Marouane Fellaini will do a job defensively if you're playing a defensive system. He can tackle, he can press, but his passing needs a lot to be desired. And Michael Carrick is an exemplary passer, he's a great footballer, but he's vulnerable to the press, and he's 36 years old now. So it's not a long-term solution, or even really a short-term one. If United signed a third midfielder, then they could do that. But like Dave says, and you've seen it in playing against Fenerbahce. He was great. He got two goals, one chance created, 75 aerial duels, 50% in his tackles, 4 blocks, complete performance. Really, really ran the show from the middle of the park. And it's like that's where you want to play him against most teams, really against all teams in that system, with someone like Van Mata at 10, dropping deep and making it a fluid 3, even though it's nominally just a 2. But the problem with that is, of course, against big teams, Jose Mourinho likes to stay on the back foot and defend. So that means that Juan Mata has to come out, and so Pogba will get pushed up to number 10. But I think unless you're playing very committed transition football every single game, which United aren't going to do because they're going to see the ball have the majority of possession in a lot of games, you can't really play him as a 10 because he gets sort of lost. He's not best with his back to goal. You want him moving around with the player ahead of him. So that's really why you play him in a deeper role so he can control the whole game.
Alson, Pogba, where's his best place in the team, mate?
He's a number 8, mate.
He is.
Ideally, and we said it at the start of the season, I didn't want to see us playing 4-2-3-1. I wanted to see us sort of transition to playing a 4-3-3, and I think we sort of are getting there, really, with us playing a 4-3-3 on a regular basis. And in that, I want to see Paul Pogba advanced on the left-hand side. Even though in my team today I've picked 2 holding midfielders and put Paul Pogba centrally ahead of them, it's not really what I want to see going forward as a default sort of position for him. I want to see someone sitting behind him clearing up, and Herrera fits that bill perfectly. And then I'd love to see maybe even a Mata, maybe Mkhitaryan, I don't know, anyone that's can play football alongside Paul Pogba. And then you've got a threat on either side of the pitch there. He's good enough to do the defensive duties. He's got the abilities to do all those defensive duties, but I think, and he's got the abilities to sort of sit in that number 10 role as well. But I think you get a better Paul Pogba when you just give him the freedom. Maybe what we saw against Fenerbahce with Timothy Fosu-Mensah coming in, maybe that's a sort of all-action midfielder that can do both as well. That might sort of start to get games as this season progresses, and you never know. We might end up seeing United play Herrera, Fosu-Mensah, and Pogba as a midfield 3 by the end of the season.
I want to see United play Fellaini, Pogba, and Fosu-Mensah as their 3 midfielders. That would break some legs, wouldn't it?
Violent.
Right, so boys, playing Chelsea, is there any players that we need to watch out? I know that they've got a very, very good squad, but which players in particular should we be worried about? Halson, we'll start with you, mate.
Well, earlier I said they was going to play a 3-5-2. I didn't mean 3-5-2. I meant 3-4-3. It's a lot more fluid in terms of the way they play. I like the 3-4-3. I think it's a great formation, very adaptable. And when you've got 3 at the back and you put 4 in midfield, and sometimes that's going to lead to being a 6 in midfield, especially when they play Hazard and Willian as the wide men in there. They're going to drop in and they're just going to make this midfield so difficult, which means that, like we saw against Liverpool, they like to hold possession in that midfield and then fire it in, and they've got options ahead of them as well. And I think Eden Hazard is an absolute nightmare if he decides to turn up, but he doesn't always decide to turn up, thankfully. Willian's a good player, and if he decides to turn up, you've got problems. I'm liking the look of Alonso, who's a new signing that they've got from Fiorentina, is it? I like the look of him on the left. I think he's a really good footballer, and obviously Diego Costa's banging the goals in up front, so we don't go to the bridge very often and get a result. If we go and get a result this time, that's a massive achievement. Like we said, 4 points out of the Liverpool and Chelsea away games, everyone will be absolutely delighted. And if we go and get 3 points this weekend, I think everyone needs to start looking and taking notice of Manchester United.
Mohamed, talk to me about the new Chelsea players. I mean, Halson's mentioned Alonso there, but then you've also got David Luiz, N'Golo Kante, and the lad from Marseille whose name I can't pronounce. Tell me about him. Why do we need to be worried?
I mean, look, N'Golo Kante, we've all saw what he did last season with Leicester. We know what he can do. David Luiz is the interesting one because everyone assumed when he came back in he would be a liability, but he's actually been really good. Playing in the back two really suits him. And United are going to find this difficult when they go to the bridge because United always, I mean, United haven't beaten Chelsea since 2012. Their record at the bridge, their record in these games in the last 6 years, I mean, it was 0-0, 3-1 loss, 1-1, 1-0 loss, 0-0, 1-1 last season. They don't play well against Chelsea. They have a historical record of not doing well against Chelsea. And now that Chelsea have got this really well-ingrained system, with this 3-5-3-4-3, and it's going to be really difficult for United to get because obviously traditionally David Luiz is a weak point, Gary Cahill's a weak point, but in the 3-4-3 there's 2 of them together. They sort of managed to cobble together to form one decent defender, and I think also David Luiz's positional sensibilities are much helped by having 2 steadier defenders either side of him, where he can just sort of go and expand the ball. And Kante, when he was like the babysit Cesc Fabregas, and playing next to Matic, who's equally kind of enthusiastic. You just get loads of energy in the middle of the park for Chelsea, and it becomes a real problem for United. But then at the same time, Liverpool had a lot of energy in the middle of the park, and United just bypassed it. Of course, the problem was there; they bypassed it on the ground rather than through the air to Zlatan. I like to see Zlatan actually engaging with David Luiz and Gary Cahill in the aerial duels. I think if you play it long to him, get him to control on his chest like he's so good at, I think you could really cause some damage with second balls to then Marcus Rashford or Jesse Lingard.
David Luiz is one of them players, I think, that became so overrated that he's now underrated. Like, he went for such a big price tag, and everyone's like, he's not worth that, and obviously he wasn't, but then people just tarred him with a brush that he was absolutely rubbish, but he's not. He's a fairly decent player.
By Luis Suarez in the Champions League, and everyone was like, oh, he's rubbish, but everyone gets rinsed by Luis Suarez in the Champions League.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Statman Dave, tell me about Chelsea. How did he play? How do we deal with it? Tell me about those new players as well.
Well, I think it is the three at the back that United have to attack. They have to attack it in a number of ways. They have two very quick wide players if they go with Rashford, Martial or Lingard, and a combination of any of those. And it's all about pulling the outside centre-back out to the byline and trying to overload the two in the penalty area that are vacated there. We saw Barcelona absolutely tear City apart. They kept on having 1v1s. The front three of Messi, Neymar and Suarez kept on having 1v1s with the City sort of back three, whoever was there at that time. And that's what United need to do. They either need to pull those back three wide, or alternatively, they need to hit Zlatan, try and in the false nine space. They need to pull Luiz out if he's playing as a central defender, as he has been in the back three. Pull him out and then get the runners in behind, so Zlatan can turn and then feed them. And then that's a good avenue for Manchester United. But I think it's going to be a big battle in midfield, like the two lads have said. And Man United need to be up for that. And that's why Marouane Fellaini and Herrera will be perfect, and Paul Pogba, for this big battle against N'Golo Kanté, Matic, and then if Hazard fancies it, him dropping back as well.
I think United need to look at crosses as well, exploiting set pieces in the end. United have won the most aerial duels this season in Europe's top 5 leagues with 61%.
That's pretty impressive.
They're really dominating in the air. They need to try and exploit that against Chelsea.
That's because we've got a team full of absolute units.
Well, it would be if we play that midfield that I said before. Fosu, Fellaini, Pogba, get them all in. Right, guys, before I ask what your predicted scoreline is going to be, I want to ask you this. Do you think that this has now sort of become a game that we really could do with winning? It's not a game that we can be happy with a draw. I mean, after the Stoke game, I feel like if we beat Stoke, then you'd have been happy with a draw away at Liverpool and okay with a draw away at Chelsea. But now has it become a lot more important? Dave, what score is your prediction?
Well, I think United, hopefully we'll nick it 1-0, but I don't think it is that important. Okay. Away at Chelsea, away at Liverpool, you'd be happy to get a point at both those places. Both of them have improved from last season. You've got Klopp there, you've got Conte there, two very good managers. I think this Premier League is going to be so competitive, and it's going to be about beating the small teams and not losing to the big teams. So that's what United need to do. They do need to turn over people like Stoke, but the Stoke game could have gone completely different if Lee Camp hadn't had one of the best games of his career. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's United are so close to being on the cusp of having that confidence back, and I hope nick a 1-0 win here and start to build some momentum.
Hey, maybe I'm over-exaggerating. Howson, it's not a must-win then, is it?
No, it's not a must-win, but it'd be bloody nice to win, wouldn't it? It's a mustn't-lose. Definitely is a mustn't-lose. Going there and getting a point is a decent result, like it was against Anfield. But I'm sure if we go and we get a point, Jose's part of the bus again. That's how it's going to go down, isn't it? Prediction-wise, I think we are going to scrap it 1-0.
Nice. Is that 2 1-0s then? Mohammed, what's your prediction?
I mean, it's 0-0, isn't it? It's got 0-0 written all over it. It's going to be one of those, like I said, United haven't beaten Chelsea since 2012. And Mourinho, maybe at Old Trafford there'll be a chance, but away from home, Mourinho's not bothered. He'll take a point. It's a good point. Chelsea are a decent side this year. If Mourinho with a bit more ambition, or if United were in a bit better rhythm and playing better, he'd probably go for a win a little bit. But it's Mourinho. United need to not lose the game. It'll be 0-0.
That's 3 predictions I've asked for there, and we've got 2 goals in all 3 of them combined. I'm saying 5-4. No, I'm not. I'll say 2-1 then, since no one else has said it. Right, guys, thank you very much for watching today. Nice one to Howson, Mohammed from Squawker, and Statman Dave for joining me today. Get in your comments below, as always, and get your opinions in. See you next time. Laters.